Paid for my son's wedding. His bride raised a toast to humiliate me in front of 250 guests. A toast to my new father-in-law, even though he's nothing more than a glorified garbage man. At that exact moment, the governor of Pennsylvania walked through the side door and asked for the microphone. And listen, if you're new here, drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Stick with me to the end, because what happened next changed the rest of my life. My name is Reginald. I'm 61 years old. I run a private waste hauling company out of a yard south of Pittsburgh. Sanitation, people call it when they want to be polite. Trash when they don't. I've worn the same pair of steel-toed boots for so long, the leather has memorized the shape of my feet. I want to tell you about the night my only son got married. The venue was the Duquesne Club downtown. The kind of place where the doorman wear gloves and the silverware has somebody else's family crest on it. 250 guests. An open bar with 20-year scotch. A 6-piece jazz ensemble in the corner playing Gershwin like the world wasn't broken. My son Bennett had wanted this exact ballroom since he was 22 years old and saw a magazine photo of a senator's daughter getting married there. He told me about it that night over takeout pizza in our little kitchen in Carrick. He said, "Dad, someday." I said, "Then someday, son?" That night took me 11 years to deliver. I spent 18 months running double shifts, taking the residential routes nobody else wanted, working the commercial pickups before sunrise and the construction debris hauls after dark. I sold a 1968 Pontiac Le Mans I'd been restoring in my garage for 15 years. Sold it to a man in Ohio for $42,000 cash. He drove it off my driveway on a Tuesday in April, and I stood there in my coveralls watching it go, and I told myself it was just a car. Just metal. My boy was getting married. The wedding came in at $160,000. I paid every penny of it from a savings account I'd been feeding for 2 decades. I stood at the back of that ballroom in a charcoal suit I'd had tailored at a place in Squirrel Hill. My hands were scrubbed 3 times that morning with mechanic soap and a nail brush. There was still a faint dark crescent under my right thumbnail that wouldn't come out. I kept that hand in my pocket. My late wife Margaret had been gone 14 years by then. Breast cancer. She used to tell me I had beautiful hands. Big knuckles, she called them. Honest knuckles. I would have given anything for her to be standing next to me that night, telling me to stop fussing and stand up straight. Bennett looked sharp. He's tall like his mother was, with her same coffee brown eyes. He'd done well for himself. Wharton MBA, 6 years at a consulting firm, currently a vice president at a private equity outfit downtown. He'd met Camille at a charity gala 2.5 years before. Her family was from outside Philadelphia, mainline. Old money, the kind of old where the original fortune came from steel or railroads and nobody in the current generation could tell you which. Her father wore a pocket square to a baseball game once. I'm not joking, there's a photograph. I watched Bennett spin Camille across the dance floor and my chest hurt with how proud I was. The chandeliers threw soft light onto her dress. The room smelled like white peonies and somebody's expensive perfume. I thought, "Margaret, you should see him. You should see your boy." Camille's family had been polite to me. Polite the way you're polite to a contractor who's overstayed in your kitchen. Her mother kept calling me Mr. Reginald instead of just Reginald, like she couldn't quite figure out where to file me. Her father shook my hand once at the rehearsal dinner and immediately wiped his palm on his trousers. I pretended not to notice. I've been pretending not to notice things like that for 40 years. You get good at it. You have to. Around 9:30, after the cake had been cut and the band took a break, Camille tapped her champagne flute with a butter knife. The room hushed. She stood up at the head table in her long ivory gown, and she lifted the microphone the bandleader had left on its stand. "I want to say something a little unconventional," she said. Her voice had that mainline lilt, all soft consonants and money. "I want to raise a toast to my new father-in-law." I straightened up. I felt my eyes start to burn the way they do when you weren't expecting kindness. I gave a small wave. A few guests turned to find me at the back. "To Reginald," she said, raising her glass, who, despite being nothing more than a glorified garbage man, despite smelling, frankly, like the back of his own truck during the rehearsal dinner, somehow scraped together enough money to give us this beautiful evening. There was a half second where the room didn't know what it had heard. Then somebody laughed. One of her cousins, I think. A short, ugly bark of a laugh. And then a few other people joined in, the nervous kind of laughter that comes when you can't tell if the joke is over or not. "So here's to Reginald," she went on, "living proof that the American dream is alive and well, even at the bottom of the dumpster." The laughter got louder. Somebody whistled. I couldn't move. My hands wouldn't come out of my pockets. My ears were ringing, and the chandeliers seemed to tilt sideways. I looked at my son. I looked at Bennett. My boy, and the boy I'd raised alone for 14 years. The boy whose first bike I'd assembled at midnight on Christmas Eve with a flashlight in my mouth. And Bennett was looking down at his plate. He was smiling. A small, tight, embarrassed smile. He was not getting up. He was not taking that microphone away from her. He was waiting for it to be over. That was the moment that broke something in me. Not the bride, the son. Camille set the microphone down and people clapped. Actual applause, like she'd done a clever thing. The bandleader started up again, and a few guests drifted back to the dance floor, like nothing had happened. Like the man who'd paid for every plate of branzino on every table hadn't just been publicly butchered. I felt a hand at my elbow. A waiter, a young black kid in a white jacket, 19 years old maybe. He didn't say anything. He just gave me the smallest squeeze and walked off. I'll remember that kid until the day I die. I was going to leave. I had my hand on the door handle. I had my coat over my arm. I was going to walk out into the November cold and drive my truck back to Carrick and sit in my kitchen and not say anything to anyone for a long time. And then the side door of the ballroom opened. A man walked in flanked by 2 state troopers. He was in his late 60s, silver-haired, wearing a navy suit with an American flag pin on the lapel. The room reacted before I did. People in the front rows started standing up. There was a ripple of whispers, then heads turning, then a kind of collective inhale. It was Governor Wesley Ashford of Pennsylvania, standing in the middle of my son's wedding reception at the Duquesne Club at 9:40 on a Saturday night. He raised one hand in a small wave to quiet the room. Then he walked, calm as a Sunday morning, straight to the bandstand. He spoke quietly to the bandleader, who immediately handed him the microphone. "Good evening, everybody," the governor said. "I apologize for the intrusion. I won't be long. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. I was in town tonight for an event at the convention center," he said, "and I was told that a friend of mine was here at this wedding. I wanted to come by personally and pay my respects. Is Reggie Holloway in this room?" Nobody moved. Then every head turned, slowly, like a wave, toward the back of the room. Toward me. The governor's eyes found mine. He smiled. A real smile. The kind you give an old friend across a long restaurant. "Reggie," he said into the microphone, "get up here, brother." I didn't move at first. My legs weren't working. Bennett was staring at me with his mouth slightly open. Camille had gone the color of skim milk. Her father was sitting very, very still. The governor waited. He waited like a man who had all night. 250 people waited with him. I walked up that center aisle in my charcoal suit, with the dark crescent under my thumbnail. I have no memory of the walk. I only remember the silence, and the faces, and the sound of my own steel-toed dress shoes on the hardwood floor. When I got to the front, the governor put his arm around me. He turned us both toward the room. "Folks," he said, "I want to tell you a little something about the man whose son just got married tonight, because I've got a feeling not a lot of you actually know him." He paused. He scanned the room. His eyes lingered on the head table for one extra beat. "Reginald Holloway and I went to South Hills High School together, class of 1982. We played varsity football together. He was the meanest left tackle Allegheny County ever produced, and the kindest human being I have ever known in my life. Both of those things are still true tonight." There was a soft murmur. Somebody, somewhere in the room, said, "Oh my God." "After high school," the governor said, "I went to college. Reggie went to work. His father had a small sanitation business. 3 trucks, 12 employees, residential routes on the south side. Reggie went in to help his dad and never came out. He took that business over in 1994 when his father had a stroke. He had a young wife. He had a 2-year-old son. He had a daddy in a wheelchair and a route book full of customers who depended on him. So he picked up a pair of work gloves and he got to it. I was looking at the floor. I couldn't look up. Now I want to tell you what Reggie Holloway has done in the 30 years since, the governor said, because I'd be willing to bet not one person in this room, not one, knows it. He held up his hand and started counting on his fingers. In 1998, Reggie's wife was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. He kept his business running and he nursed her through 4 years of treatment until she passed away. Raised his son alone after that. Never remarried. He raised a second finger. In 2006, Reggie's company expanded into commercial waste and recycling. Today, Ari asked, Holloway Sanitation Services holds municipal contracts in 11 boroughs across Allegheny and Washington counties, employs 362 people. Last year's gross revenue, according to public filings on the bid contracts, was somewhere north of $41 million. A small gasp from somewhere on the bride's side of the room. Third, he said, raising another finger, in 2014, Reggie quietly founded something called the Margaret Holloway Foundation, named after his late wife. The foundation has paid the full college tuition of 173 children of sanitation workers, municipal employees, and trades workers in western Pennsylvania. One of those kids is now a pediatric surgeon at Children's Hospital. Another is a state trooper. One is, full disclosure, my chief of staff's son. He turned to look at me. I was crying. I didn't even know when it had started. The tears were just running down my face and to my collar. Fourth, he said, when the floods hit Johnstown 3 years ago, Reggie sent 8 trucks and 20 men down there at his own expense for 9 days, hauled debris for free. The mayor of Johnstown personally called my office to ask who this man was. I told him exactly who this man was. He paused. Then he looked out at the room. His voice dropped a register. So when I heard tonight, from a friend of mine who happens to be on the catering staff at this venue, that the bride had stood up in front of 250 people and called my brother Reggie a glorified garbage man, well, I rearranged my evening. Dead silence. I have never in my life heard a room that quiet. The governor turned toward the head table. Young lady, he said to Camille, I don't know you. I imagine you come from a fine family, but I want you to understand something, and I want everybody in this room to understand it with you. The man you just humiliated paid for every fork on every table here tonight by getting up at 4 a.m. for 40 years. He has lifted more weight than anybody in this ballroom will ever lift in their lives. He has buried his father, and he has buried his wife, and he has built something honest and useful with his own 2 hands, and he raised the man you just married. He looked at Bennett. Son, the governor said, look at your father. Bennett's head came up slowly. His face was wet. Look at him, son. Bennett looked at me. That's a man, the governor said. Right there, that's what one looks like. He handed the microphone back to the bandleader. He gave me a long, quiet hug. He whispered something in my ear that I won't ever repeat to anyone. Then he turned to the room, gave a small nod, and walked out the way he came. Troopers on either side, the side door clicking shut behind him. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then I walked back down that aisle, alone this time, and I picked up my coat from where I'd left it on a chair. Bennett was on his feet now. He was coming toward me fast, weaving between the tables. Dad, he said. Dad, wait, please. I stopped. I looked at my son. I looked at this 33-year-old man in his Tom Ford tuxedo, with his MBA and his vice presidency and his mainline bride, and I saw the 8-year-old boy who used to ride shotgun in my garbage truck on Saturday mornings because daycare was too expensive and he was lonely without his mom. Bennett, I said, you sat there. Dad, you sat there, you smiled, you let her. Dad, I didn't know what to. You knew exactly what to do, son. You knew the second she opened her mouth. You just chose not to do it. His face crumpled. I'd never seen him look like that. Not even at Margaret's funeral. I put my hand on his cheek, the hand with the dark crescent under the thumbnail. He flinched. Then he didn't. He leaned into it. I love you, I told him. I will always love you. But I will not be coming to Sunday dinner at your house. I will not be at the birth of your children. I will not be at Christmas. Not until you understand what happened here tonight. And not until she does. Then I reached into my inside coat pocket and I took out an envelope I had been carrying since that morning. Inside it was a cashier's check for $200,000. It was the down payment on a townhouse in Shadyside that Bennett and Camille had picked out the month before. I'd been planning to hand it to them at the end of the night. Margaret's money, partly. The Pontiac money, partly. The Pontiac money, partly. 25 years of careful saving, mostly. I tore the envelope in half. Then, in quarters, I let the pieces fall on the carpet at his feet. I walked out of the Duquesne Club into a cold November rain. I drove home to Carrick in silence. I sat at my kitchen table in my charcoal suit, and I drank a glass of bourbon, and then I drank another one, and then I went to bed. That was 18 months ago. I want to tell you what happened after, because the part where the governor walks in is not actually the part of this story that matters. That part was just a moment the truth came out. The part that matters is everything that happened in the 18 months since. Camille's family tried damage control first. Her father called me 3 days after the wedding, left a long voicemail about an unfortunate misunderstanding and the heightened emotions of the evening. I didn't call back. He called again the following week. I didn't call back then either. Eventually, he stopped. The story got out. I don't know exactly how. Probably one of the guests posted something. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette ran a small piece in the regional section about the governor's surprise appearance. Then, a local TV station picked it up. Then, a national morning show called. I declined every interview. So did the governor's office. Very politely. The story died down within a couple of weeks, but not before 2 new municipal contracts came across my desk from townships I've been trying to break into for 5 years. The mayors called personally. One of them asked if I'd be interested in serving on a state advisory board for infrastructure. I said I'd think about it. I am still thinking about it. Bennett tried to reach me. He left messages. He sent a long handwritten letter. I read the letter twice and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. I needed him to feel what I had felt at the back of that ballroom. I needed him to sit in it. The way I'd been sitting in small humiliations from his in-laws for 2.5 years and never said a word about it to him. Because I didn't want to be the kind of father who poisoned his son's marriage. That had been my mistake. I see it now. I had taught him to tolerate it by tolerating it first. 4 months after the wedding, Bennett showed up at my yard on a Tuesday morning. November, just after 7. I was loading a roll-off container onto a flatbed. He was in jeans and a Carhartt jacket. I hadn't seen him in jeans since he was in college. He didn't say hello. He walked over to the truck, and he picked up the other end of the chain, and he helped me load the container. We worked for about 40 minutes without speaking. Then we sat in the cab of the truck, with 2 cups of coffee from the gas station across the street. I left her, Dad, he said. I waited. It wasn't because of what she said about you. Or, it wasn't only that. It was everything underneath what she said. The whole shape of how she saw you. And once I could see it, I couldn't unsee it. And then I started seeing it about other things too. About how she talked about the cleaning lady. About how she talked to the valet at her parents' club. About how she talked about Mom. That last part stopped me cold. What did she say about your mother? He couldn't look at me. She said it must have been a relief for you when Mom died. Because the medical bills were so expensive. I closed my eyes. When did she say that? 8 months ago. I told myself she didn't mean it. I told myself it was a stupid thing somebody says when they're tired. But Dad, she meant it. She meant every word of it. I drank my coffee. I let him sit in it. I want to come back, Dad, he said finally. I know I don't deserve to. I know that's not how it works. But I am asking. I am asking my father if I can come back. I thought for a long time. Bennett, I said, you don't come back the same way. You come back as somebody who knows what he did. You come back slow. You come to dinner on Sundays. You don't bring anybody. You don't bring anything except yourself. You and me. We rebuild it brick by brick. And if you ever, in the rest of my life, sit there silent while somebody humiliates somebody who can't defend themselves, not me, anybody, the kid bagging your groceries, the woman cleaning your office, if you ever sit there silent again, you and I are done. For good. Are we clear? Yes, sir. Say it back to me. Slow. Sundays. Just me. And I never sit silent again. All right. He started crying then, not the polite quiet crying of his mother's funeral. The other kind. The kind I'd cried alone in my kitchen the night of his wedding. I let him cry. I didn't reach for him. I drank my coffee. When he was done, I started the truck. Get out, son. I've got a route to run. He got out. He stood in the yard in his Carhartt jacket and he watched me drive off. I watched him in the side mirror until I turned the corner. He came to Sunday dinner that week. He's come every Sunday since for 14 months. He brings nothing. He helps me cook. We eat at the kitchen table where Margaret and I used to sit. We don't talk about Camille. We don't have to. The divorce was final August. I want to tell you one more thing, and then I'll let you go. 3 months ago, I was at a hardware store in Mount Lebanon, picking up a pressure regulator for a hot water heater I was fixing in one of my late mother's rental properties. I was at the checkout, and the woman behind me said, "That's a job for a professional." I turned around. She was smiling. She was maybe my age. Silver hair and a long braid. Reading glasses on a chain. A bag of birdseed and a packet of basil starts in her cart. "I am a professional," I said. "Just not at this." She laughed. She had a good laugh. Her name is Theodora. She's a retired high school chemistry teacher. She has 2 grown kids and 4 grandkids and a small house in Dormont with a vegetable garden in the back. We've had dinner 6 times. I am not in a hurry. I have already had one great love in my life. I don't need another one to be great. I just need it to be honest and to laugh at my jokes and to not flinch when I take off my work boots in the mudroom. She doesn't flinch. So that's the story. A bride called me a garbage man in front of 250 people. The governor of Pennsylvania walked into the room and reminded everybody, including me, what a man actually is. My son lost a wife and found his father again. And I learned at 61 years old that I had spent 40 years apologizing for a life I should have been proud of from the first day. I'm not apologizing anymore. If you've ever been the person at the back of the room while somebody you love sat silent, tell me about it in the comments. I read them, all of them. And if this story meant something to you, I've got 2 more on the end screen that I think you'll want to hear. The first one is about my brother-in-law. The second one is about a Thanksgiving dinner in 1996 that I have never told anybody about until now. Thank you for sitting with me. I'll see you on the next one. I've thought about that night 1,000 times since. Not the governor part. Not the speech. The part where my son sat at the head table and looked at his plate while his new wife took my dignity apart in front of 250 people. That's the part that stays with me. And what I've come to understand, sitting at my kitchen table in Carrick with a cup of coffee going cold in front of me, is that nothing about that night was an accident. Camille said what she said because nobody in her life had ever told her she couldn't. Bennett sat silent because I had taught him, by example, that silence was how a Holloway man handled disrespect. He learned that from me. Every time his mother-in-law called me Mr. Bennon, Reginald, every time her father wiped his hand on his trousers, every time I swallowed it and smiled, I was raising my son. I was teaching him exactly what I taught him. The lesson landed perfectly. That's the hard truth I had to sit with. A man builds the world he tolerates. I tolerated 40 years of small humiliations because I told myself it was strength, when really it was just fear wearing a work jacket. Fear of being too much. Fear of taking up space I hadn't earned in their eyes. And my son grew up watching that. And he became a man who could sit at a head table and not stand up for his own father. What I want any man my age to hear, if you've been the quiet one, is this. Dignity is not arrogance. Standing up for yourself is not making a scene. The day you stop apologizing for the shape of your hands is the day your children start to learn what a real man looks like. Because they were always watching, and they were always learning, even when you thought you were just being humble. 3 things have carried me through this last year and a half. Character, meaning you do the right thing in front of 250 people, even when it cost you a son for a while. Sense, meaning you read the room honestly and you stop pretending the slow disrespect isn't disrespect just because the people doing it have nicer shoes. And grit, meaning when the envelope hits the floor and you walk out into the cold November rain, you keep walking. You don't crawl back to apologize for being walked out on. Bennett is on his way over for Sunday dinner in about an hour. He'll bring nothing, like we agreed. He'll help me cook. We will not talk about Camille. We will rebuild brick by brick, the way men rebuild things. Slowly, with our hands, with no shortcuts. I lost a daughter-in-law I never really had. I found a son I almost lost. And I found myself at 61 for the first time. I will take that trade every single day.